All right, today we're going to dig into a really powerful idea from a thinker named Sisler. He has this model that suggests the political battles we see, the ones that consume all our attention, are pretty much just a distraction. He calls it the lever and the rising fulcrum, and honestly, it might completely change the way you look at how power actually works.
I mean, we've all been there, right? Every single election, it feels like the world is ending. The rhetoric is just dialed up to 11, the divisions feel like they're tearing everything apart, and it seems like the entire future of the country is hanging by a thread. Each side is absolutely convinced that if the other guys win, it's game over.
But what if all that noise, all that conflict, as real as it feels to us, is actually designed to keep us from noticing a much deeper, much more important power shift that's happening right under our feet?
To really get this, Sisler uses this brilliant analogy. He compares our whole two-party political system to something you'd never expect: professional wrestling.
Now just think about it for a second. In wrestling, the fight in the ring looks and feels real. The athletes are giving it everything they've got. You have your heroes, you have your villains, and the crowd gets so emotionally invested, right? People are screaming, they're choosing their favorites. And sometimes the good guy wins, sometimes the bad guy wins. The drama, the spectacle, it all feels 100% authentic when you're in the moment. And here is the punchline. No matter which wrestler gets their hand raised at the end of the night, the larger organization, the one that owns the arena, sells the merchandise, and promotes the whole show, always makes a profit. Its power grows no matter who's wearing the championship belt.
So, if our political parties are the wrestlers, what's the organization that always wins? Well, this brings us to the absolute core of Sisler's framework, the lever and the fulcrum. This is the model that helps us see past the performance and understand the real mechanics of power.
Okay, so here's how it breaks down. The political parties, they're the lever. They swing back and forth, left and right with every election. This is where all the cameras are pointed, where all the arguments happen. But the fulcrum, that little triangle that the lever rests on, that is the underlying institutional power. Think of the permanent bureaucracies, the regulatory agencies, the deep state, the unseen foundation.
And we spend all of our emotional energy, all of our time and money focused on this horizontal swing. We are ecstatic when the lever swings our way, and we're in total despair when it swings to the other side. We are completely mesmerized by this back and forth fight.
But here's the trick. Here's the hidden game. While we are all glued to the lever, the fulcrum itself is slowly, quietly, almost invisibly rising. Institutional power gets bigger. It consolidates year after year, no matter which party is in charge. The actual foundation of state power just gets higher and heavier, and it doesn't matter who wins the election.
So, the big question is, why? Why does this happen? What's the engine that's pushing that fulcrum higher and higher? Well, to understand that, we need to ask a simple question. What does our society actually value? Sisler points us to a field called axiology, which is really just the science of what we prioritize.
Now, it sounds kind of academic, but it boils down to this. Does a society put people first, or does it put the system first? Sisler calls the first one intrinsic value. This is the belief that individual people, their freedom, their well-being, that's the most important thing. And he calls the second one systemic value. And that's the belief that the rules, the institutions, the system itself is what's most important.
Now check this out, because this basically charts the life cycle of a whole civilization. Over on the left, you've got a society that's all about intrinsic value. People are the priority. The whole point of the system is to serve the citizens. But over time, societies tend to drift over to the right. They start prioritizing systemic value, where the system's main goal is just to preserve itself and to grow.
And that is the absolute key. Institutions that were created to serve people eventually get more interested in serving themselves. The rules get more complicated, the bureaucracy gets bigger, and citizens slowly go from being the masters of the system to being servants of the system. That's the fuel that makes the fulcrum rise.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. This is a pattern you can see repeating itself over and over and over again all throughout human history.
I mean, just look at the Roman Republic. It started out as a dynamic, citizen-focused society and slowly transformed into this massive, centralized, top-heavy empire. Or the Ottoman Empire started with all this decentralized energy and then hardened into this rigid, self-protecting, bureaucratic machine. You can even find this pattern in ancient texts like the Book of Judges, which literally describes a repeating cycle of peace, corruption, and crisis. The pattern is undeniable.
So, let's bring it all home. What does this model actually tell us about the world we're living in right now? Well, it forces us to completely redefine what the problem even is.
This quote right here, this just hits the nail on the head. The biggest threat to a civilization isn't some enemy at the gates. It's the moment when its own system, the Fulcrum, becomes so big and so powerful that it stops serving the people it was built for. The value of the individual citizen gets crushed under the weight of the system.
And this brings it all into focus. The fight between the two parties, that back and forth swing of the lever, that's just a distraction. The real fundamental issue is the steady, unstoppable growth of centralized institutional power that's totally insulated from the outcome of those fights.
And that leaves us with a really challenging final thought. If the system, the fulcrum, just keeps getting bigger no matter who is in office, if the state expands regardless of who wins the election, when do we finally stop watching the wrestlers and start paying attention to the organization that owns the whole arena?